I'm going to call the meeting to order then, the 10th meeting of the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates in the 41st Parliament. Today we are gathering to study the effectiveness of the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises and the Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program. We have witnesses before us today from AMITA Corporation, Monica Preston, President. Good afternoon, thank you. Bubble Technology Industries, Inc., Leanne Ng, Vice President, perhaps is not quite with us yet, but we do have Mr. Karna Gupta, the President and CEO of the Information Technology Association of Canada. Welcome, Mr. Gupta. Just before we start, Mr. McCallum, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just before you invite the witnesses to speak, I just wanted to read out a notice of a motion that the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates conduct a study into the provision of sensitive economic data by Statistics Canada to public servants, ministers and ministerial staff before it's released to the public, that the committee consider the impacts this has on market confidence given the potential for this sensitive data to be utilized for personal gain before its general publication, and that the committee report its findings to the House. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think you know, Mr. McCallum, notice of motion is not debatable in any way, so we'll simply file that for future reference. And now, without any further delay, we'll invite, hello, Ms. Ng, Leanne Ng. It's a pleasure to have you with us here as well. We're just about to begin the opening comments from the witnesses, and then we'll have rounds of questions. Have you an order in which you'd like to go? Perhaps we have first in line, we have AMITA Corporation, Monica Preston, President. Perhaps that would be a place to start.
Sure, no problem.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Monica Preston. I'm the President of AMITA Corporation and one of 3 owners of AMITA and WorldReach Software, which is a subsidiary of AMITA Corporation. I'd first like to thank the committee for inviting me here today. And it is an honor to appear in front of all of you and to provide my assistance in any way possible. AMITA Corporation is a public safety and emergency management solutions company offering innovative commercialized software solutions, information technology services, and expertise in research and development programs. AMITA is a Canadian company started in 1991 with 3 staff and has grown over the years. And I'm proud to say that today we have over 85 staff in AMITA. AMITA has been able to achieve its international success with a strong vision and hardworking Canadians. Assistance from the Government of Canada is essential not only to our business, but to all small and medium-sized businesses. My company's experience with the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises and the Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program has been positive. At this time, we are completing contracting related to our CICP Call 1 selection, and our experience with the application and procurement processes have also been positive. The CICP process is straightforward. It provides a clear statement of what is expected from companies. It has provided us also with a direct incentive to bring a new product to the market. Something that I would like the committee to consider is the effectiveness, in this effectiveness study, is how big the impact and endorsement from the Government of Canada can have on a small to medium enterprise. And AMITA is proof of this. In 1998, our company began to commercialize a product for consular management. It was built for the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, and the solution was deployed in Canada and today is used in all the Canadian embassies and missions around the world. We were very fortunate at that time that our sponsor and champion at DFATE gave us the support and endorsement when other countries inquired about our company and about our products. 7 countries now use our WorldReach products. A company like AMITA has numerous innovations that are in the pre-commercialization phase. To move to commercialization, a key element to future sales is a strong reference from the Government of Canada. in the situation with the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. They gave us that support, and in doing so, helped us further and expand our business and create more jobs for Canadians, which in turn strengthens the Canadian economy. In my opinion, small and medium-sized enterprises are a large part of a healthy economy. Direct government support of small to medium business through government programs and offices like CICP and the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises will ultimately contribute to a healthier and more sustainable Canadian economy. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Preston. That was very interesting. Next in line on our agenda, we have Bubble Technology Industries, Leanne Ng. Are you ready to make your presentation,
Yes.
Ms. Ng?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me here today to speak about our company's experience with the Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program. I'll begin with a few words about our company. Bubble Technology Industries was founded in 1988 and is located in the rural area of Chalk River, Ontario, which is about 2 hours west of Ottawa. We are a rather unique 50-person company, fully Canadian-owned, and we provide products, services, and research primarily in the areas of radiation detection and explosives detection. Although we are a small company, we have a big footprint. We have over 400 customers in 25 different countries and have conducted over 100 research programs for customers around the world and here at home. Our technology has been used to protect people and infrastructure at many major events, including the U.S. presidential inauguration, the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. Our radiation detectors were used in Japan to protect workers in the recent Fukushima power plant recovery efforts. Our technology has flown on over a dozen space missions to support research aimed at protecting astronauts from radiation hazards and is equally used to protect nuclear submariners when they're deployed undersea. These achievements are made possible by an outstanding team of people with whom I have the privilege to work. Our staff is highly trained and highly skilled with multidisciplinary expertise in science, engineering, and manufacturing. Our ability to generate a spark of an idea and then carry that idea through all the stages of research, development, production, and deployment is the foundation of our success. We became aware of the CICP pilot program in September 2010 when the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises launched the initiative. We assessed our technology portfolio at the time and submitted a proposal in November 2010 for an innovative radiation detecting speed bump that had been developed through internal company investment but had not yet been brought to the commercial market. In particular, the technology addressed the CICP priority area of safety and security by providing authorities with a simple-to-use, effective method of screening vehicles for radioactive materials. In February 2011, we were notified that our submission had been selected as a pre-qualified proposal, and as you've previously heard, an innovation selected by CICP must then be matched with a federal test department, which represents a potential end user of the innovation. We were fortunate in that several federal departments expressed their interest in the technology, and ultimately we were matched with the RCMP as the test department. At present, we have worked through the necessary contract discussions with PWGSC and are anticipating the contract award shortly. The project itself will be 15 months in duration and includes testing of initial prototypes by the RCMP in order to solicit some early end-user feedback on the technology. We will use this feedback to identify and drive modifications to the design as necessary, and the RCMP will then have the opportunity to assess the prototypes through a second round of testing to ensure that the technology meets their operational needs. As a company which essentially makes its living through innovation and technology exploitation, we have recognized for many years that there is a funding gap in Canada between research and commercialization. Canada has a number of programs which encourage and incentivize research. However, the mandate of many of these programs ends before the technology has actually been commercially exploited, and more importantly, before the technology has actually been transferred to the users that need it. In our particular industry, which is geared towards defense and security applications, the lack of funding programs to carry the technology that last leg of the journey means that there are first responders and military personnel who are not receiving the benefit of the latest technological advancements as quickly as they could be. In addition, this funding gap means that Canada is not reaping the full economic benefits of technology commercialization, including the creation of high-quality jobs and the benefits associated with strong commercial exports. From our perspective, the creation of the Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program is a step in the right direction. It recognizes the value of carrying innovations all the way to market, and it connects companies with federal departments who can provide useful feedback on an emerging product and who can potentially serve as reference buyers to support international sales efforts. We sincerely hope that CICP will have an opportunity to continue and expand. At the moment, the demand for the program appears to far outstrip the available resources. Even a relatively small company like ours will typically have several technologies at any given time whose commercial exploitation could be accelerated if the resources were available. As the program evolves, there are three key considerations to bear in mind. Innovation does take time. Commercialization also takes time. But the faster you can do both, the greater the competitive advantage. Rapid time to market is critical if we want to compete effectively on the world stage, and time to market can be accelerated when companies can leverage efficient, stable, multi-year funding programs supporting technology exploitation. Thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts on the program, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Ms. Ng. That's very interesting. Next, from the Information Technology Association of Canada, Mr. Karna Gupta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and honourable members, for extending ITAC the opportunity to meet with you this afternoon to participate in the study of the effectiveness of the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises and the Canadian Innovation and Commercialization Program. At the outset, I would like to communicate that the ITAC is in support of both of these initiatives. If you don't know, ITAC is the National Association of Technology Companies. Our members are about 300 plus companies in Canada, as large as CGI, RIM, OpenText, and Rogers. But the vast majority of our members are small and medium businesses. And these companies, we believe, are vitally important to our industry in many respects, and they represent the future of ICT. ICT's mandate has always been to promote the public policy environment to conduct the effective growth of the industry, as well as grow the knowledge-based sector in general. Our primary mandate has been to provide strong, innovative, competitive ICT industry, more accelerated use of productivity-enhancing ICT tools, a fair, progressive public sector business regime in Canada, advancement of e-health, a smart regulatory regime in Canada, and a robust, competitive ICT talent pool for the country. I hope today I will be able to demonstrate that both OSME and CICP advance all of these causes and the promotion of a strong, innovative ICT industry in Canada, while supporting the need for fair, progressive public sector business regime. With respect to OSME, in 2005, Office has been a major contributor to the important dialogue between ICT vendor community and federal government through ITAC public sector business committees. They have also participated in various other programs and panels we have run throughout the year. It supports our core belief that Canada's public sector procurement regime must play a strategic role in the promotion of Canadian ingenuity among the small and emerging businesses. In our view, it plays an essential role in ensuring that the $7 billion public sector ICT market is accessible to all. With respect to CICP, it is the key instrument of fulfillment of its role in Canadian Innovation and Commercialization Program in the budget of 2010. ITAC has been in discussion with government as early as 2005 about these needs for a program. When CICP was announced, it was clearly framed as a policy instrument for the support of innovation rather than a procurement instrument. To our knowledge, several companies have participated through this process and benefited from it. And we fully endorse the announcement of the announcement in July, the second call for expression of interest, and have actively encouraged our members to participate in this program. I would be remiss if I don't comment on following yesterday's Jenkins report. Ladies and gentlemen, it was outlined that the commercialization process leads to the new innovation. First, of course, you start with the idea. Then you apply the knowledge of a robust talent pool to develop a prototype and have a trial customer. Then take the learnings from this trial and start the commercialization process. And at this stage, you need the infusion of the capital and to keep the lights on and the process growing. And finally, you do need the access to the both local and global markets. Canadian government's willingness to play a central role in this process through an organized program is critical to small business. It is also a wise public policy, which I cannot overstate ITAC's support for CICP. The only recommendation I can make for its improvement is to make it a permanent part of the Canadian innovation policy. In this regard, we agree with the expert panel that reported yesterday. Their support for CICP and their suggestions on how to strengthen this program is worth repeating here. ITAC values its relationship with OSME. Last year, we ran an ingenious program looking at various small businesses, and to that extent, the buy and sell GC.ca, the government program, became one of the finalists in the event. And it sets the best practice for small businesses to mid-sized enterprises who are planning their own web-based program looking outside, facing portals. In conclusion, I simply want to restate the strong support from the ICT industry for the Office of Small and Medium Business Enterprise, and we are committed to provide any support it may need with its program, and also, if required, provide active consultation to further improve its effectiveness. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. We'll now proceed to questions from committee members. These will be 5-minute rounds, and please take note that that includes questions and answers. First, for the official opposition, the NDP, Alexandra Boularice. Alexandra, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for having traveled to be with us today. To begin, Ms. Ng, if you have contributed to the success of the Super Bowl, you already have a great deal of respect from me. I salute your success, all of you, as small business owners, and I think this is the main reason you are here today. So I'd like to take a few moments to give you a bigger context of the innovation and development sector in Canada. Based on OECD figures for 2008-2009, Canada is not doing well when it comes to direct investment in private sector R&D. In fact, we're at the bottom of the list, and of course this is and this also reflects the fact that we don't file as many patents as other OECD countries do, and we also don't produce as, or rather, fewer patents are filed by our PhDs than in other countries. So, of course, the Bureau is doing many good things, but there are other things it might be doing better. What about the companies themselves? It seems that since 2000 they are not investing as much. Investment stood at 1% in 2000. That number went up a bit and then fell again by 2009. So in your opinion, what could the government do better to support SMEs, to help them invest more in their own R&D? And how could they directly finance their efforts? And what do you think of the fact that Canada is at the bottom of the OECD list?
Directed to any one of the...
La personne qui se sent à l'aise d'expliquer.
I asked this question of any witness. So my question is, how do you think the government can help you personally more, and also your entire sector, including your competitors who work in the area of innovation in Canada?
Things, as I mentioned, is really the issue of time to market and also having predictability in terms of what funding is going to be available. And so one of the things that can continue to be improved, it's always a process of continuous improvement, is trying to streamline the selection and procurement processes for many of these contracts while maintaining the required transparency and fairness in the procurement process. When a company has a better ability to forecast when a contract may become available, when they have a better ability to forecast what the government's priorities are going to be in future years, they then have the opportunity to decide strategically where they wish to invest their own company resources, and that would be of great assistance to many small and medium companies.
Can I add to that? I was just going to say that I agree with that. The whole process from the time that you're awarded a piece of work to the time you are able to start work on it can be quite lengthy, and that has a huge impact. So I think streamlining things like, getting requisitions signed and getting contracts out the door is important. The other thing I think is really important is to bridge the gap so that the average person in government knows when they can and cannot support and under what conditions they can support a Canadian company publicly. And I think there's confusion there.
Mr. Chair, my comment on this would be draw on my personal experience of running businesses for over 30 years. For small businesses, the biggest issue really is the commercialization and productization. And this is where CICP could play a tremendous role, being the early customer of some of the new innovations in our own country, and that'll be hugely helpful. It's not the ideas we lack or the money, it's often the commercialization process is shaky. And by the time we get to market, it's way too late. Other people have gone there. So it's the CICP and OSME through acquisition process and having government become the smart customer, early customer, does help small businesses to grow.
D'accord. J'en profite pour une...
Thank you. I have a final question. Ms. Ng, you said that this program did a lot of things well, but there was a lack of resources, and that you probably would need more stable, medium and long-term funding. So what is the timeline you see here? What is the predictability horizon that you need?
Resources, what I meant was that the demand for the program seemed to be very, very high, and the current pilot program is funded at a level where, approximately 24 projects were able to be funded in the first year. So certainly, as the pilot program enters its second year, and as the government looks ahead to the future of the program, we would certainly hope that CICP would have an opportunity to receive additional funding, and to have that funding on a multi-year basis, so that companies can plan on perhaps annual or biannual calls for proposals, and can essentially integrate their research and development and commercialization cycles with the program structure.
On the government side, the first questioner is Mr. Ron Cannon.
Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses, and first of all, congratulations for being accepted into the Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program, otherwise known as CICP. It's something that's long overdue for Canadian entrepreneurs, the Year of Entrepreneurs, and celebrate also Small Business Week, and congratulations to all the small business owners. As my colleague alluded to, they are the economic engine that drives our economy. I had the opportunity to be in business and know what it's like to realize that sometimes there's more a month left in the money, and trying to figure out how to make the payroll, and you celebrate when things go well. It's kind of like taking that dream and making it a reality. And I applaud you for your innovation and your creativity. One of the challenges that has alluded to is in Canada we haven't been as successful as we should be with taking that concept of commercialization or product, from patent to product to profit. And that's one of the reasons for our study, is trying to find ways that we can help small and medium-sized businesses flourish. So from your experience working with the OSME and the CICP project, was it, first of all, how did you find out about the project and the program, and was it cumbersome for the first time to the application process?
For MEDA, we found out because we're regularly scanning for these type of programs that can assist us in doing what we do. When we read the requirements that we had to respond to, we felt it was very straightforward. These were questions that we expected to see. We had to do some research, of course, to respond to them, but I think it's not overwhelming for a company to respond to that kind of a request.
Similarly, for our company, we actually heard about the CICP program through several avenues. We were sent emails from certain contacts within the government when the program was announced, and it was also announced on the Federal Opportunities website. So I think from a communications perspective, the announcement was well communicated. From our perspective, because we do quite a lot of government contracting both here in Canada, the application process was not overly onerous. We understood the sorts of questions that they were asking, and it was fairly consistent with other proposals that we've submitted. That process could potentially be somewhat intimidating for a company that's never done business with the Government of Canada, but I think OSME has been doing a good job at holding many information sessions and trying to be very available to answer questions.
Ms. Preston, you made a comment, interesting comment, that innovation takes time and commercialization takes time. Mm-hmm. So where do you find that we could most efficiently or expedite the process to bring those two dynamic areas so we can expedite the process to bring the product to market?
Yeah, if I look at our experience in AMITA and our consular product suite that we have today, it was really having a really good Government of Canada reference under our belt when we approached other countries, because we knew that this type of modernization was needed for consular. It protects citizens traveling abroad, does out-of-country passport production, all kinds of stuff like that. And it was just really a matter of time before other countries would want it. And it's a close-knit community. So the fact that we would have the Canadian government supporting us as a company, making themselves available as necessary if other countries are approaching and say, can we look at how you're using this product? Can you give us your feedback? That's very important. So that helps, you know, on the international side of things. I think in country, the hardest thing that we struggle with in terms of a small company is trying to anticipate the length of time that it's going to take before we can get a contract and start work, because we have to plan ahead and manage our resources really well to be profitable and to have a good growing company. So if you could focus some energy on procurement and looking at how long it is taking to get contracts out for small and medium businesses, this is information that's readily available, that would be really appreciated. Once the contract's in place, things go very well. But it's really from the time from award to the fact that the contract's in place that is really difficult, and probably is more difficult for smaller companies.
Okay, just a quick comment, Mr. Gupta, from the tech sector. That's one of the big growing area. I represent the Okanagan Valley, the Silicon Vineyard, we like to call it. What from the iTech, do you see your biggest opportunities ahead, and how can Canada help move those forward from the industry?
The biggest issue here would be really helping these small businesses at the commercialization phase, which really means adoption of a lot of the ICT technologies at an early stage. Most of these young companies, as they come out of the chute, you know, they struggle to get the first customer. And as the applications are done, you know, they give the government and the government agencies as the first buyers, it creates a reference point, and that's quite critical.
So right from incubation to procurement then.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Ron. Next, for the NDP, Matthew Revenant.
Oui, bien, merci d'être là. Et puis,
Thank you for being here, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to come back to an issue which my colleague, Mr. Cannon, raised, but I'd like to approach it differently. I would like to know, first, have you ever in the past dealt with the Canadian government? That's my first question. And second, if you had never dealt with the Canadian government before, in what way do you think the application process could be improved to help other companies who have never dealt with the government in the past to access this problem? How can the application process be improved? This question is more specifically for Ms. Preston Missing.
I'll just answer that. Yes, we've dealt with the Canadian government from the inception of our start of our company. We do deal with other governments outside of Canada as well. So every government has their way of working. I think that's pretty well known, and you have to get to know it and understand it and be able to wade your way through it to do business with it. It's probably like any other business sector in that regard. With respect to the application process, I believe that a lot of what's behind some of the way that the evaluation occurs in the process is through the scoring system. So I think if companies understand how that scoring system and evaluation system is conducted when they put their submission in, that would definitely help them to make sure that they represent themselves the best that they can in their application.
And from our perspective, we also have done a considerable amount of work with the Government of Canada and other governments around the world, so the application process from our perspective was relatively straightforward in terms of facilitating it for enterprises that haven't been involved with government work. I think certainly the outreach that OSME has engaged in terms of holding training sessions and having resources available to answer questions is most likely the best way to lower the barrier of entry for other companies.
D'accord. Quelques questions supplémentaires.
Thank you. I have an additional question. When it comes to the evaluation of your applications, did you find that the evaluation criteria, as well as the panel members, were well communicated to you? In other words, was the process transparent?
In terms of the evaluation criteria, I think that those were well laid out in the call for proposals. That was documented, and so if you read through the call for proposals carefully, you could understand how the proposal would be adjudicated. In terms of the review members, from our perspective, we understood that many of the technical reviewers would be pulled as subject matter experts from groups like NRC, IRAP. Again, in our field of work, it's very common for these sorts of technical proposals to be evaluated by those who are deemed to be experts in the industry across the country. So from our perspective, that was straightforward and transparent.
Matthew.
Donc, si je pourrais demander
Final question. I think, Ms. Preston, you said that you have 50 employees. Ms. Ng, you have 85, or vice versa. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm wondering how many people worked on the application? How many of your people had to follow the entire process? Did it require a lot of energy and resources on the part of your company? So again, how many people were involved in the entire process?
For AMITA, we would have had a key business development person on this file to do the first draft of this who knew our innovation quite well. I would definitely always have a lot of input into the assessment and review and of what we're putting together, and we would probably also have had on this one somebody who would do a good quality editing, because we have word limits here, so we want to make sure we're communicating what we need to do within the context. So we would have had probably one person full-time for a few weeks working on this, and part of my time and an editor's time.
And from our perspective, similarly for these sorts of proposals, we have typically a technical lead who is responsible for ensuring that the technical content is correct. We'll have someone from finance who helps to put together the cost estimates and cost proposals, and then we have someone from a business development or sales side who goes through and helps to create the text that goes into the proposal. So in terms of total effort, it was similar to other efforts that we have for the Canadian government.
Merci.
That concludes your time, Matthew. Thank you. For the Conservatives, Jacques Gourde.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here, and I would also like to thank them and congratulate them for their business successes. Ms. Preston, Ms. Ng, you talked about the work that your company has been engaged in. It's such a pleasure for us to have you here. It's very gratifying to see Canadian SMEs as successful as you are. You contribute in a significant way to our economy, and therefore we really take to heart everything you have to tell us this afternoon. So your companies benefited from the CICP. Why did you decide to apply to it in the first place?
The opportunity, we reviewed the requirements and we reviewed the mandate for the program, and we recognize that as an opportunity to accelerate the commercialization of one of the technologies that we had developed with in-house funding. As I mentioned, as a small company, you always have to prioritize the use of your resources, and so when additional resources become available that you can leverage, it means that you can bring new technologies to market more quickly. So we looked at that call for proposals and saw that it was a good fit for the technology that we had available.
And we also, in the same vein, in public safety and security, there was one of the key areas there was in the health area, and we do have innovations there. So it was a good fit for us. And we also had an innovation that was in the right place in terms of being pre-commercialization. So we chose the one that we submitted for a first round for those reasons. We would probably wait. If we had to do this on our own and we didn't have a kickstart here, we would probably have to wait with this a bit longer before we could tackle it.
Le programme,
Do you think that this program could be improved?
I think I believe in continuous improvement for all programs, so I think there's always an opportunity to continue to refine the program. I think the approach that was taken here was a good one. Rather than trying to plan every last detail in theory, I think it's a good idea to get a pilot program launched and try it, and then refine and tweak that program as you see the results coming back from it. In terms of specific improvements, as I mentioned, the proposal process for us was quite transparent and straightforward. As Ms. Preston has also mentioned, the focus area not only for this program but across the board would always be to try and streamline and accelerate that contracting process once the program has been accepted. From our perspective, it is an innovative technology. We'd like to get that technology to market before others have an opportunity to do so. So the more quickly we can get the work started, the better.
Maybe I could add my comments just from a little bit of a different perspective. I don't know all of the details of the program, but what I do know is things that would help us, and maybe I could articulate those, and then you can determine whether the program, in fact, can address them or not. One of the things that in the last year that I've seen with program review and the strategic review is that it's more difficult to get departments to engage in innovations when they already have such a full plate of things to do. So if there was some incentive for government, DGs, directors to get involved in supporting some of this innovation, it would be very helpful. And that goes towards trying to find a testing department, of course, who will test the products and give you feedback, because they also have priorities in terms of their work that they have to do day to day. So I think if we can somehow provide some incentives there, that would be very useful. I would like to see some clarification of intellectual property policies, Treasury Board policies, be clarified to people at the working level in government, because there's a lot of confusion about intellectual property. And in the context of CICP, this becomes important. I'd like to see government staff more broadly at the director and DG level understand intellectual property and really what it means and understand the Treasury Board policies around this. We talked about the procurement processes and trying to streamline those as much as possible. That would probably, I guess the other thing I could add is if government can understand what capabilities small and medium companies have to offer, you often see large programs involve large companies. Government feels that they need to have large companies front and center because there's a lot of money at stake. But I think if government also knew what small and medium companies had in terms of capabilities, perhaps there would be a better way to integrate them in that work. So I can't answer about the program specifically because I don't know all the details about it, but I can offer some of the things that we'd like to see fixed, and perhaps the program could address some of those.
Merci de vos commentaires.
Concludes your time. For the Liberal Party, John McCallum, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all three of you for being with us today. Congratulations to Ms. Preston Mizing on your entrepreneurship, and also to the entrepreneurship of your many members, Mr. Gupta. I think nobody in this room, to my knowledge, thinks that either of these two programs are doing a bad job. But my impression is that they are both tiny in relation to the scale of the challenges that Canada faces. I remember when one of the officials involved with the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises was here, he or she said that the U.S. equivalent had 40, 50, 100 times more employees. I don't remember the exact number. And Ms. Ng, I think you said there were way more people wanting the financing than could get it, and there were a couple of dozen examples. Well, this is nice, but it's really small potatoes compared with the challenges we face, the very low R&D levels that my colleague referred to, and the huge financing troubles. This report from yesterday, this task force, they said, let me just quote a bit, innovative Canadian companies face real challenges in getting startup funding and late-stage risk capital financing. In many cases, the gap is filled by foreign investors, which means that too many commercial benefits and intellectual property end up leaving the country. Directing the BDC to work with angel investor groups and develop late-stage risk capital growth equity funds will pay dividends. So my impression from this task force is that they were told not to spend any more money in total, but I think they're saying spend less money on SR&ED grants, tax credits, and more focused direct loans or investments through agencies like BDC. That the SR&ED thing is too complicated. It's a shotgun approach. Other countries have been more successful with this more direct approach through BDC in our case. So I guess I'd like to ask each of you whether you agree with this proposal to redirect more of the available funding into direct action through BDC. Perhaps Mr. Gupta.
There was an announcement recently made yesterday, some additional funding for BDC, but your point is right. There needs to be more money going into early stage funding of companies through BDC or other agencies, in large part to support the whole productization process. You know, most of the people we talk to, our membership and others in small business, the challenge is always at that's the hurdle. It's not the idea stage. We have enough ideas in the country and our education system is providing sufficient. Is making it commercialized, making it product and taking it to the market, it falls down, and that's where the funding is needed. And that's where some of the dedicated funding would absolutely help.
Okay. Mr. President or Ms. Ng?
In AMITA, we also use BDC funding from time to time, and working capital becomes really important when you're trying to take a new initiative forward in the marketplace. So I think here we're talking about maybe a reallocation, like allocating more directly. The SR&ED, and I think is indirect in that the company first invests and then gets a tax credit afterwards. So I think this is maybe the fine point here, is that the company has to make the investment. With BDC, you're going out and looking for working capital for idea. It's not as expensive as other types of capital, but it's still quite a bit of money for BDC. So, you know, running a company, we are often self-financing quite of the time. We're in AMITA, we do have to, you know, finance our growth most often. And when we get to the point where working capital for a new idea is required, then we're looking around to see where that can come from and what the options are. So I think that may be part of what this report is saying, that for in those particular cases where you need that, then BDC is a good choice for that.
Ms. Ng?
So in our case, our company has benefited immensely from the SR&ED program. And I think when finances are tight, there's often a tendency to perhaps look at reducing investments in longer-term, longer-return programs in order to allocate funds to things which could demonstrate returns more quickly. But I think the important thing to note is that innovation is the activity which then feeds into the commercialization process. So if you begin to reduce funding or support at the innovation side, you may see an explosion of commercialization in the short term, but eventually the process that feeds the commercialization activity will dry up. So from our perspective, it's equally important to continue funding both the longer term innovation or research activities as well as increase funding to commercialization activities.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cullum. Your time is just up. Next, for the Conservatives, Bernard Trottier.
Thank you for coming in today. Just a few questions about the evolution of a product life cycle. You know, there's some basic blue sky research that companies do, then there's sometimes a patent, and then there's a product development effort. If you could describe the process of how you worked with CICP, it sounds like you didn't have a final product necessarily. There was a high-level set of requirements that was given to you by, you know, in each of your examples with foreign affairs, and then also with when it came to radiation detection and so on, and that there was further work that CICP did with you to refine the product. Could you describe how that works? It doesn't sound like there was a final set of requirements that was given to you in each of these cases, and it was just basically respond to a request for proposals. Could you describe that working relationship, and where within your product and service evolution did CICP intervene, and how did that help you?
Sure. So the CICP program is structured somewhat differently than a traditional call for proposals because in a traditional case there will often be a government department that identifies a specific need and therefore a specific set of requirements for the technology. In the case of CICP, they were not prescribing what sort of technology they were willing to fund. They basically went out to small and medium enterprises and asked, what technologies do you have which meet a minimum level of technology maturity but which you have not yet brought across that commercialization line? So from our perspective, when the call for proposals came out, we basically looked at our technology portfolio and identified which technologies were sufficiently mature to go into testing with a government department, but which had not yet been sold commercially. And that's how we narrowed down the list of technologies for submission, ultimately to one particular technology that we submitted. I think there's some merit in that approach if the intent of the program is to try and jumpstart the ability of small and medium enterprises to commercialize the activity, because it allows a very broad cross-section of enterprises to respond with whatever technology they feel is most promising and whatever technology they feel will have the greatest impact and return for their company.
For AMITA, we had an early stage solution for early outbreak management, and it is based on the SARS Commission report and the ability to manage information during that time when there was an outbreak and nobody really knew what it was, and people were concerned, and people, some people died, and of course it really affected the economy at the time. So this was a capability gap that we had a solution for, and that's the one that we went forward with. It is complex in that it has to be integrated in the health system, and so being able to test it with the federal department and then have some way of getting some other involvement from provinces and municipalities potentially here becomes really interesting for us to be able to get it tested and really assess the effectiveness of it. So, for example, it could be if there's a vessel of interest coming with refugees or something. We have C. difficile outbreaks that are moving, and that's been recently reported. All kinds of things like that. So that's the one we decided to submit under the program. It is in the early stage because it's not contracted, so the test is still yet to be done. So, the effectiveness will come after we see how this goes. If I think back to our consular solution, we had to repackage it to sell it. Countries weren't interested in buying this whole huge solution. They wanted to buy pieces of it depending on what they needed. So we also, as we're selling, we have to change our business models. We have to think about what makes it more attractive to the buyer, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things going out through this product management cycle that you're talking about that are to, about the product itself and where it should go. What's the best way to sell it? What's the best business model to sell it in? And as time passes in the technology area, you talked about the fact that this has a huge impact on us because we get these devices coming towards us. We get people using iPads in the hospital now. And we have to, if we're not fast in getting this out the door, then we are always trying to retrofit this stuff into what we're doing. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that's fine, because, in a way, it sounds like CICP and its government clients, through its testing and feedback and collaborative product development ideas, is making an indirect investment in product development for your companies. And so that's, maybe it's one of these things that doesn't get viewed as a, it's not like writing a check, but it's a real investment of their time and effort to help you move along in that product evolution. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, and also you have the government getting a capability that it doesn't have. Yeah. So it's not just a one-way thing.
Yeah.
No. Monsieur Chartier, merci beaucoup. Monsieur Blanchet, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank our witnesses for being here. Something struck me in your presentations, and it was to what extent marketing or the commercialization of a product is important. Ms. Preston, you said it was important for you, amongst other things, to be able to say from the outset when you intend to commercialize a product, to leverage the services of government to attract new clients. So, Ms. Preston, in the process of research and development and innovation and the commercialization, you gave me the impression that what's important to you was the quick commercialization of innovation. Is this interpretation correct?
I think that when you have an innovation, a solution, you would like to see it in use as quickly as possible to derive the benefit and demonstrate the benefit. The commercialization itself, if I think about my example with DFATE, we have 7 countries today, and we probably will have another dozen in the next 5 years. But that's not quick. That's over a 10-year period. So, the innovation itself was developed over 10 years ago, and of course it evolves as we get more customers. The product evolves, it offers new features and functions. So that's kind of where it was coming from on that.
Okay. Madame Ng.
Ms. Ng, you told us that this program is a step in the right direction, and you shared with us certain ideas to move forward. But I would like to hear you talk more about something else, since your company is based on innovation. Could you perhaps give us ideas not so much about innovation and commercialization, but how to translate a good idea into an innovation? How can you help other companies like yourselves perform even better?
Question. In our company, we are somewhat unique, as I mentioned, because we happen to have 50 people who are trained and skilled in various disciplines of science and engineering. And so when you put all of those people in one place, you are often able to generate, through a lot of brainstorming, a number of good ideas. As a small company, we then have to decide from that list of good ideas which ones do we either invest in ourselves or seek additional support to nurture along from a good idea into an innovation, which is something that can be useful to people. In terms of assisting other companies to do it, it's something that you improve upon with experience. You have to find a way within your organization to efficiently translate good ideas into a tangible technology or prototype, which you can then show people has merit. And often when you reach that stage, you can then garner additional interest or funding or support, which will help you build a business case to go that last leg of the journey into commercialization. I think every company, depending on their particular area of their industry sector, they have to decide basically how to prioritize which ideas actually get funded, because it is typically not possible for a company to try and invest in all of their ideas and bring it to an innovation stage.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Gupta.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gupta. The information and communications technology field is one which evolves very quickly. You insisted on commercialization of new ideas. So I would like you to explain to us in a little more detail what kinds of supports information technology companies need, more specifically compared to other high-tech companies. Other companies might have a longer development lag or timeline. So could you tell us how the IT sector can perform even better in Canada?
Give you an example. If you're in a mobility space, talking to our membership, if you're in a mobility space developing applications, the rapid prototyping is the quickest way to get to market. So as you commercialize, you need to quickly do a prototype test with a customer. If it sticks, then you move forward. Otherwise, you get to the next one. If we talk about some of our other client base, which are developing more products and solutions that are more permanent in nature and elaborate, bigger ERP solutions, and then you need a longer cycle. So prototyping would take longer, the commercialization process longer. So it very much varies by the type of products you're talking about and also by the sectors. Then you got the software and hardware differences. In the software cases, the prototyping could move a lot faster than hardware. Hardware requires a manufacturing process, prototyping and testing. So all of these processes need some help for early adoption. The quickest way, at least my personal experience has been in this field, has been if you can get to try it on a smart customer, the idea stays at the idea stage for a very long time. Funding aside, somebody needs to use the product, it truly needs to solve a business problem, and then you can move it forward. So the early prototype leads to a very quick commercialization, and it truly varies by sector. It's not a universal answer for various sectors.
Merci. Our next questioner is Monsieur Trottier again.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask a question for Mr. Gupta. So ITAC is a very diverse organization, as you described, some very large organizations, CGIs and Rogers and RIM and OpenText, for example, then also a number of smaller entities. And I'm wondering from a public policy perspective, whether 50 jobs get created in a large company in Canada or 50 jobs get created in a small company, is there a fundamental reason why CICP should steer business towards some of the smaller members of your organization versus steering it towards larger ones? What's the benefit to Canada to having those jobs within small and medium enterprises?
It's a very good question. I think the small and medium businesses truly becomes the underlying economic engine. Most of the large companies, end of the day, their new innovation and often is through acquisition and building into the new talents as they go to the market, either as a joint bid or something else. Unless we seed the garden with seeds, which is the small businesses, the economy overall will suffer. So we truly believe that it's extremely important from a policy point of view, have sufficient sufficient incentive in place through CICP and others, where young businesses can grow in all sectors. And once you create a billion-dollar company, in its shadow, the other companies will grow and an ecosystem will be formed. But if you don't start at an early stage, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah. Well, is there a lack of fairness and transparency, though, where sometimes small and medium businesses and these smaller IT companies just aren't able to commercialize their products in the same way? And is it less fair and transparent for them to get a leg up vis-a-vis their larger competitors?
I wouldn't say it's less fair or transparent. I think it's more of an issue of comfort zone. If nobody gets ever fired for, buying IBM, that was the old saying, right? So you always go to your comfort zone, and most buyers tend to go to the comfort zone. But as you look at the ecosystem today, more and more bigger companies for new products and the innovative products and new solutions, they are reaching out to the community and to the ecosystem to bring in the innovations because it is their lifeblood. They need to stay alive in a competitive world. So they reach out to the innovative companies. And more we see the younger companies and provide that support, I think better off we would be as a broader economic engine as a country.
Okay. And maybe you could describe from a prospective customer point of view how they might look at the endorsement from the Canadian government. Say they procured a product from a small and medium enterprise, a Canadian-based one, and they see that the government of Canada has endorsed that product, made that investment. What are the things that they're looking at, and how does that make them more eager to buy that product?
For the government of Canada, you mean?
No, I'm talking about, let's say there's an export market. So in the example of Ms. Preston's company, let's say it's another country's embassies now want to buy this product, and maybe I'll challenge both of you. Just describe that, what's going on in that other customer's mind when they're making their decision about, why should they make this investment in this Canadian company now?
So I'll give you a live example. We have a great, Canadian company that is developing some 3D technology on scanning. It's a young company, small company out of Montreal region. And if they cannot sell to the government of Canada, it will be very hard for another government to buy that product for security purposes. So if you have your own country supporting the product and growing that, supporting that company, it'd be much easier for them to go global and go to the broader market. So in that sense, the government, having Canadian government supporting and buying Canadian product first creates that reference customer when it's applicable.
Yeah. Maybe you could describe, after making this initial agreement, I guess it's not is it finalized now, the agreement with the Government of Canada, with Department of Foreign Affairs? You know, they signed up as a customer? And
yeah, well, they were the initial, department that we worked on the solution with, and then we commercialized it from that solution. We own the intellectual property. But talking to another country, in that community, and it's small. So, the UK, when they were looking at purchasing it, it's very easy for them to find out, like, what do you think of this product? Canada, you're using it. It's in Canada House here in London. Can we go take a look at it? We'd like to know what your people think about it. Of course, it was a good product. We were pretty confident that, they would be able to say good things about the use of it. And they supported that. And so that became important. If they would not have had any reference and were the first user of it, or even worse, if we had to say, well, the Government of Canada, isn't interested in using this. I think it does say something to that international community that probably isn't all that positive in terms of supporting Canadian business. Is there a concern here that you're trying to get to, just in your question?
Sorry, thank you very much. We can put you down again, but that's your time. Thank you. Monsieur Baudry.
Merci, Monsieur le...
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two brief questions. I believe that I will share my 5 minutes with my colleague Metzier. Now, the first thing we were wondering when we were looking over the presentation you were going to make is that we wanted to know your opinion with regard to the Canadian government's position on suppliers to the government. In your opinion, should the government give priority to Canadian companies in its procurement process to help them and to help job creation in Canada? And my question is for any of you.
Merci pour cette réponse brève et précise.
Well, thank you for that very brief and specific reply. Perhaps a little more open-ended question than my previous one. I would like to hear what suggestions you may have as to the most appropriate way for the Canadian government to stimulate innovation in Canada.
Yeah.
I'll answer that question. I think there's several ways you can promote innovation. It starts at the university level, at the educational. So the whole notion of bringing the universities and the private sector together, having some program that creates that entrepreneurship culture within the community is the ideal scenario. Most of the time, a lot of the ideas would stay at a university lab stage and never see the day of light. So there is something to be said where some incentive from a government program point of view reach out to finding a way to bridging that gap from university labs to the private sector to create the product and solutions that's needed. So that will create a stronger bridge and quicker access to the market as well. And multiple new products and services will come out.
To that question?
Yes, I think there's wisdom in the saying that necessity is the mother of invention, and so one of the things that can help a company focus their research and expertise is to have a better understanding of what capability gaps exist for customers such as the federal government, and that's a process whereby having an ability for companies to work very closely with potential end user departments to understand their current concept of operations, and then to have an opportunity at that early stage to identify technology development paths which could help fill a capability gap perhaps 5 years down the road. I think that degree of transparency, that access to many of these federal end users departments will help to steer small and medium enterprises in terms of where they want to direct their efforts.
Thank you.
Bon, je voudrais parler...
When it comes to investment, you all agree that it should be increased in this program, but would there be any risks associated to that effect by government? For instance, government might end up investing in projects which would not yield the expected results. As we all know, this is a 2-year pilot program. I find it strange that Sharon Besney-Miller, the director of this program, said that the success of the program should be measured by the interest shown by SMEs and by investments made, and not by the innovation which came about of the program. So I ask you, is this program designed to help companies fill any gaps? So should the program be measured in terms of results or investments made?
Actually important when we talk about how to measure success to actually separate the processes of innovation and commercialization. In the process of innovation, where you're conducting research, there has to be a willingness on the part of the government to fund research without necessarily having a guarantee that that research will produce the desired outcome. That is the nature of research. There is technical risk, and understanding what doesn't work does have merit in terms of research value. In terms of the commercialization aspect of it, at that stage of maturity, the technology has an intended end use, an intended application, and in the CICP program, by matching the technology with a test department, I think one of the measures of success can be whether that test department actually adopts that technology and moves forward with that technology over the subsequent years after that initial testing activity. From my perspective, the value of having the CICP funding is an opportunity to introduce a new technology to an end user, but I don't wish that the end user stops at that point. The intent here, of course, is to use that as a launching point for further product sales. So I think the uptake of the technology is a good measure of success.
Mr. Braid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on ascending to this role, albeit temporarily. Anyway, I will be sharing my time with Ms. Block.
Okay.
Mr. Gupta, the Jenkins report has been referenced a couple of times during the session this afternoon. Of course, Tom Jenkins, the head of OpenText, and his panel tabled their report yesterday. I realize it's only been 24 hours or so. What have you seen in the report? This is sort of a general, broad question. What have you seen in the report that you like?
I think most of the recommendations are sound in our opinion. The only one we're still kind of valid, talking to our members, is the on SRED impact. When you go to a mostly labor-based model, there is a risk that a lot of the companies that are highly capital intensive, how their SRED gets impacted. So we haven't really got the full of the analysis done yet, but that is one of the areas we need to look through further. But overall, all of the other recommendations seems to be in line with what we've been talking about.
Great, thank you. I think you mentioned in your remarks a little earlier that you've done outreach to your members with respect to the CICP program. Is that correct? And if so, how did you do that outreach?
We reach out to our members on a regular basis through various forums as they participate in these programs. So we have several of our staffs who look after each of these smaller accounts. As I mentioned, we have over 300 accounts. Close to 200 is small to medium-sized companies in the ICT field. And none of the, when we come up with a comment, is based on inputs we get from them and gets into one input.
Great, thank you. Ms. Ng, you mentioned that your product was matched with the RCMP. Could you just describe how that matching process took place? Was it an effective process? Did it work with respect to your particular product?
Well, as I mentioned, we were quite fortunate. There were actually a number of federal test departments that expressed an interest in potentially testing the innovation. We had, in our proposal, there's an opportunity to suggest potential end-user organizations for whom the technology may have a benefit, which we did. And then following the pre-qualified selection for the proposal, we were then able to engage directly with the CICP program office, discuss with them which departments they may wish to contact, who, the intention of the technology, who it should be used by, and that was a fairly transparent process in terms of, making a few phone calls. They found someone in the RCMP that had an interest in the technology, and it went quite quickly from there. Once we had identified the RCMP as the test department, we actually had some discussions with them to sort of work out the details of how they would like to test the technology in order to include that activity in the statement of work, and it went quite smoothly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you as well for being here today. Any one of you can probably answer this question for me. I think it'll be a very straightforward answer. You've referenced that commercialization takes time, innovation takes time. I think we heard from witnesses in previous meetings that, their products have reached completion. They may take 5 to 10 years in order to do that. And so my question for you is, are there provisions built into a contract that you may have to allow for new research, new technology that might come along in that time frame for you to maybe change tracks with the product that you are working on?
So with regards to our CICP contract, the CICP program is intended, obviously, to take technologies which are quite close to commercialization and just sort of push them over the line so that the test departments can see them and use them. In our particular activity, there is an opportunity for the RCMP to conduct some testing on the initial prototypes which are available now. There's a small amount of activity for them to provide feedback and then have us do modest design changes, not drastic design changes, but things that will help customize that technology for their particular application, and then we will upgrade those prototypes and redeploy them with the RCMP for additional testing. So there is an ability to do some minor modifications. I think, looking further down the road, all these technologies, there's often an opportunity to have a technology insertion, which is much more drastic than just a modification, and that again is an area which should be looked at for sort of follow-on funding in these programs.
I think that's an interesting concept. We have a similar situation where we can do some small changes and include them in the time frame that we're talking about. But I would be interested in looking at that a bit more as well.
Thank you. Mr. McCallum, your 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to return to what I was talking about earlier, but with perhaps a bit more clarity in the question. I think this report that came out yesterday did a number of things, but I just focus on 3, and I'd ask each of you if you agree with it or not. And they were under the constraint, the government currently spends about $7 billion a year in these areas, and they had to keep that level constant. So it was a question of reallocation. Now, given our challenges, you could argue that we should spend more, but in today's fiscal climate, one might be lucky to just keep what we have. So point number 1 is the shreds now account for about half, 3.5 out of 7 billion. And this makes Canada an outlier in terms of a very heavy dependence on indirect tax incentives versus direct spending. So they propose to reduce over time the refundability of shred, which would produce savings, which they would then shift over to BDC for direct grants or expenditures or investments on late-stage risk capital financing and startup funding. Now, I think if you're a pure market person, you might not like that because, in a way, it might involve some public agency choosing winners and losers as opposed to the tax system, which is neutral. But the tax system, on the other hand, could be argued to be not terribly effective and a shotgun approach. And finally, I think everyone here would agree they propose CICP be made permanent and larger. And given what we've been saying, I think you'd all agree with that. But my question then is, do you agree, philosophically or in terms of your experience, with the proposal to reduce somewhat the money spent on shred and use those savings to do more through BDC on late-stage and startup funding? Mr. Gupta.
I would suggest it probably would make sense because the money goes out first through BDC, and the shred by nature comes to you after you have spent money. So the money, you have to have some amount of cash in your pocket to spend it and then wait for the tax return. So inherently there is a delay and you're spending money early. And the second issue on the shred side potentially could be, the amount of consultant gets involved. So there is almost something taken off the top before these startups even see the money.
Yeah.
So there are some issues that still needs to be improved. But on balance, my whole thinking here is if the total money going out the door is still the same, and some is reallocated from back end to front end through BDC, it is probably a good thing because a lot of these startups need the money first.
Thank you. Ms. Preston?
This is a tough one for me because I really don't have enough insight. I think for our company, the SHRED program is an important part of what we do, and we are investing somewhere between 15 and 20% in R&D every year in our company. So I really haven't looked at that to say what impact it would have on our company.
Well, Ms. Ng, I particularly wanted to hear you because last time you said how much you like SHRED, but you can't have everything. You have to choose.
Right. So if you add the additional constraint that the total funding must stay even, I have to preface my answer because I think it's difficult for me to give really a fair and unbiased answer. As I mentioned before, our company is very heavily involved in very innovative front-end contract research, and the SHRED program has been very beneficial to us. I think depending on how the reallocation occurred, I could potentially be persuaded.
Can I ask one quick question? Okay, I mentioned this concern. I don't particularly have this concern, but some free market types would be concerned if you give BDC a lot of control over what sectors they choose, what businesses they choose, in terms of which are the ones that are more promising. Do any of you have concerns about that? And if so, how would you satisfy those concerns?
So, if I may, that's one of the aspects of the SHRED program which for us has been very successful. The type of work that we do, which is primarily focused on radiation and explosives detection, is a fairly small niche area of expertise, not just in Canada but in the world. And so it's an area of expertise which doesn't often show up, when people are looking at a strategic overview of where investment should go. We are often in an area which would fall between the cracks. So the SHRED program for us has been very effective because it allows us to choose where we believe the most promising research can be conducted, and then allows us to benefit from those tax credits without having any additional filters put on to where the research should be directed.
I think it could change, if you were to switch that just to BDC, I think it could change the landscape quite a bit in terms of the companies that would be willing to, take out that capital and pay for the type of interest that goes along with that type of capital from BDC.
Thank you very much. One quick comment, Mr. Gupta.
To your comment, the money must be used. It cannot sit in BDC. So the accountability of getting the money out the door is primary of importance.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to thank our witnesses today. We have no more people on the questioning list. So thank you for your input onto this study and the information you provided and your opinion. And we'll be looking at this over the next number of weeks, and we'll be providing a review of where we're going, what we're doing, and we really appreciate your effort to coming here today and answering all these questions. And with that, I'll adjourn unless there's another issue, and I don't see one. We're out of here. Thank you very much.